every career experience I've had, it's had ups, it's had downs. I try to take away the learnings. I try to see it as a positive, and I try to apply them in what I'm doing today.
This podcast encourages and empowers you to create your own unique real story, develop your own unique real statement, and discover your own unique real self. The power is yours. Good morning, John Lim. Previously, episode 1441 of the 12-Minute Convos podcast. It's been just 2 years, 2 months, 11 days, and 15 hours since we last recorded that conversation. That was then. This is now. John, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Angel. I can't believe that. So episode 1441. I got the lucky palindrome number.
Well, there we go. Yeah. Almost divisible by 12, right? Which would have been ideal.
As long as you don't ask me to do math on the spot, we're good. But I'm doing great, Angel. How are you?
I am excellent as can be. The last time we spoke, so the podcast was going, right?
Yes.
And I do hope you are moving forward, of course.
Absolutely.
What's going on there? How have things evolved?
Oh, since we last spoke, just so much, Angel. So now I've written a book which came out in April of 2019 called Making Fake Star Trek. It's about my days as an actor. I co-wrote it with one of my former co-stars. And our next book, Making More Fake Star Trek, which is the sequel, is out on February 14th, Valentine's Day of 2020. So depending on when this airs, it might be coming out or it might already be out. So yeah, it's
That's
exciting
amazing
stuff.
I think, I'm not sure if my memory serves me right, but I think you said that was one of your favorite songs at age 12 on the podcast, the Star Trek theme song. I'm not sure.
You know what? I didn't list it, but it was definitely in my top 5. So, I think I chose at age 12. I had to think back. At age 12, I think I was on a Billy Joel kick.
Yeah, well, you revised it. Yeah, you revised it because you got more time to think about it. When we got on the podcast, there's like no cues there, right? But yeah, it's been revised. But I think Star Trek was in there. So has there been?
May have been in the. Yeah, I'm trying. Gosh, you know what? I didn't even take a look at 1441. But yeah, you know what it is, Angel? It's sometimes when you ask someone at one time to look back at age 12, and then you ask them maybe a few years later, you start thinking about all the different songs that were in your life at that time. So it's a great question.
Yeah, you're very correct. But obviously then there's a connection, right, with the Star Trek theme.
Absolutely.
And what you're doing. So, I mean, open that up for us some more, please.
Yeah, I was so among the many things I've done, I was at one point a film and television actor, and it was in 2005 and 2006 that I was cast in a Star Trek fan production, which actually was a mix of passionate fans, but also Hollywood professionals, people who had actually worked on Star Trek. And I was involved in 2 of the episodes. It was an online series, and they actually got some of the original actors from the show to act in guest starring roles. So it was really cool. And this was based off of the original Star Trek from the 1960s, which came out long before I was born, but I had grown up with it in reruns. And so it had that kind of 1960s kind of kitschy look to it with the Art Deco buttons and the colorful, angles and the cheesy, outdated special effects. But it's a show that's always been near and dear to my heart. So the opportunity to get into act in something like that was incredible for me. And many years later, I decided, you know what, it's time to tell this story because as I said to my co-writer Andy, who you have on the show as well, we talk about these stories like we're a pair of old men. Every time we get on the phone, that's what we reminisce about. So I said, you know what, we need to share the story with more than just us two and our circle. So that's why we wrote these books, and the response has been tremendous, and it's just been incredibly gratifying and humbling.
That's wonderful. Where can we go to follow that up?
Oh, yeah, that's available. We have a website, makingfakestartrek.com, or you can just go straight to Amazon, type in Making Fake Star Trek, and the books will pop up. So the both books available in paperback and Kindle.
We've been inviting a ton of individuals back onto the podcast, following their story, seeing how things have evolved. And it has been both motivational and inspirational on a scale of probably 1,000x to
Which
hear.
matches how many the episodes you've done 1,000x.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and it's just fascinating. Now, you left corporate, it's what, like 5 years now? It's probably a 5 year
6
anniversary?
years. It was
6 years.
2014, coming up on
Uh,
6 years.
There we go. Yeah. So you left corporate and you went in to do something. Of course, your parents were entrepreneurs, so it
Yes.
wasn't something totally new.
But Angel, my parents were immigrants, and at the time that they came to this country in the 70s, being an entrepreneur was really hard.
Oh,
And so
it
it's
wasn't
interesting.
pretty,
Yeah,
right? It wasn't like
it was not pretty. It was difficult. It was expensive, and it was not seen as. It's funny because we live in a day and age where entrepreneurship, I think, is seen kind of like as the modern day superhero. It's what people now say they want to be. But back then, back when I was growing up, my parents actually tried to steer me away from entrepreneurship. They said, no, you do not want to run your own business. You want a professional career. You want to go to school. You want to get the degrees and all of that. It's not until much later that I came into my entrepreneurship. As I say to my dad, it's kind of in our blood, it's inevitable. And but entrepreneurship today is so different than it was, 30, 40 years ago.
When you look back, though, in hindsight, was it worth it?
Yeah, I think so. Every experience that I've had, whether it's in the professional world, the corporate world, I use almost every skill or at least a large number of them in what I do today. So every experience that I've had, I try to take away the learnings. I try to see it as a positive, and I try to apply them in what I'm doing today. So for me, every career experience I've had, it's had ups, it's had downs, but when I look back on it, I always try to see the positive.
How are you consuming content? How has that evolved? I know you are a proponent for definitely diving into content.
Yeah, in terms of content, I'm continuing with the podcast. It's evolved since we last spoke. I was doing interviews, and then last year in 2019, I decided to make it more of a personal podcast. So I was documenting all the different things that I was doing, and I covered step by step things like how to write a book, how to launch a podcast. So all the different things. And one of the projects that I've been working on for the last 2 years is I actually now work with my dad once a week, and he has a retail shop, and I helped him take his business online using a platform called Poshmark. So I did a whole mini series on that. And so just the podcast for me, in the early days was me learning from other people. And today I continue to have conversations once in a while, but I also like to share kind of what I'm learning. And if I can benefit someone, great. So, and that's kind of my goal is I want to be able to share kind of the things that I'm doing and let people know that there are a lot of options for you and how you can maybe save some of the headache and some of the hitting your head against the brick wall moments that I had in trying different things.
There's a legacy block there. Having that time with your father,
Yeah.
you can definitely reflect on a conversation that many of us find it difficult to put in the forefront of our minds, which is that conversation of death. How do you interact with that conversation? The possibility that you can die today or tomorrow.
You know what? I did a TEDx speech in 2018, and Angel, one of the things I talked about, which I don't talk about often, was that I lost my mom in 2007, and I did. Thankfully, I got to spend the last weeks with her when she was in the hospital, and she was just reminding me when I was growing up and when I became an adult, and so many times she reminded me, like, every day you have is a gift. And it's one of those messages that I know a lot of us hear, but we take it for granted. And it wasn't until those last weeks that I was with her that message really started to sink in, that every moment that you have here on this planet is a gift, and the people that you have, embrace them as long as you can. It's one of the reasons why I love the opportunity to spend more time with my dad in a completely different way. Working with him on his business has been just an incredible way for us to strengthen an already incredible relationship. So the way I see it, Angel, is that you just have to embrace each day. Every day that you wake up, you have to appreciate the fact that I'm here. I have another day ahead of me. I have another hour. I have another minute, and just try to make the most of it that you can. And by the same token, and this is what I work on, is try not to let the little things kind of get to you. Try not to let life's little quirks and annoyances get to you too much, and just appreciate the fact that the fact that you're here, the fact that I'm here, the fact that I'm on this podcast with you, that I have more blessings than probably 98% of the people on the planet. And that's something to be appreciated and to really respect and to be all inspired by. And that's the way I try to live my life.
Well, I'm thankful to have you here. Again, it's such a grand opportunity to call in, say, hey, what's going on, John? Are you doing what you said you were going to be doing? And to hear that you've not given up. It's inspirational. It's motivational, my friend. Not just for me. I mean, I get it directly, right? On point. This is then edited and then it goes out. But I get the medicine immediately. And I do thank you for your service to humanity, everything that you're doing, John. In closing, is there anything else you'd like to share with our amazing audience?
Yeah, and this is something that I learned from my dad. My dad, he's so full of youth and vigor, and it's because he keeps busy. It's because he's continuing to work on things that he's passionate about. And I think that's the key. So many of us look at life in terms of, okay, I'm going to work a job. I may not like this job, but in 40 or 50 years, I'll be able to retire and start enjoying life. And that to me is kind of a broken paradigm. You have to find joy and passion in what you're doing. I mean, you're not going to love everything that you do, and that goes for whether you're working in a career or in a business, but you have to have that spark, because it's not about, okay, I'm just going to defer my happiness for 30 or 40 or 50 years, because life doesn't work that way. Like you said, we don't know whether we're guaranteed a tomorrow. So you really need to make the most of the today, and you need to find the joy and passion in what you're doing, whether it is a business that you're starting or whether it is a career that you're in for the long haul. And you can find happiness in both. And if you're not finding that happiness, then you got to make that change, because you owe it to yourself and you owe it to the people around you to really maximize your happiness so that you can really help maximize theirs. And that's the way I see it, because it's infectious. The people that you surround yourself with, what you put out there, that's the vibration, that's the energy that they get. And you want to put out something that is positive. I think you want to put out something that shows that I am appreciative of what it is that I have right here and now.
John, again, a pleasure. I treasure, my friend. Thank you for being on what is inspired by 12-Minute Convos with Angel Jones. This podcast is produced by Pod Edits. Visit podedits.com for professional podcast publishing.